I was going to finish chapter 2 from The Psychology of Money. Years ago, I asked economist Robert Shiller, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics, "What do you want to know about investing that we can't know?" The exact role of luck in successful outcomes, he answered. I love that response because no one actually thinks luck doesn't play a role in financial success. But since it's hard to quantify luck and route to success suggest people's success is owed to it, the default stance is often to implicitly ignore luck as a factor of success. If I say there's a billion investors in the world, by sheer chance would you expect 10 of them to become billionaires predominantly off luck? You would reply, of course. But then if I ask you to name those investors to their face, you will likely back down. When judging others, attributing success to luck makes you look jealous and mean, even if we know it exists. And when judging yourself, attributing success to luck can be too demoralizing to accept. Economist Vasco Mazamer has shown that income among brothers are more correlated than height or weight. If you are rich and tall, your brother is more likely to also be rich than he is tall. I think most of us intuitively know this is true. The quality of your education and the doors that open for you are heavily linked to your parents' social economic status. But find me two rich brothers and I'll show you two men who do not think this study's findings applies to them. Failure, which can be anything from bankruptcy to not meeting a personal goal, is equally abused. Did failed businesses not try hard enough? Were bad investments not thought through well enough? Are wayward careers due to laziness? Sometimes, yes, of course. But how much? It's so hard to know. Everything worth pursuing has less than 100% odds of succeeding. And risk is just what happens when you end up on the unfortunate side of the equation. Just as with luck, the story gets too hard, too messy, too complex if we try to pick apart how much of an outcome was a conscious decision versus a risk. Say I buy a stock, and 5 years later it's gone nowhere. It's possible I made a bad decision by buying it in the first place. It's also possible that I made a good decision that had an 80% chance of making money, and I happened to end up on the side of the unfortunate 20%. How do I know which is which? Did I make a mistake, or did I just experience the reality of risk? It's possible to statistically measure whether some decisions were wise, but in the real world, day to day, we simply don't. It's too hard. We prefer simple stories which are easy but often visually misleading. After spending years around investors and business leaders, I've come to realize that someone else's failure is usually attributed to bad decisions, while your own failures are usually chalked up to the dark side of risk. When judging your failures, I'm likely to prefer a clean and simple story of cause and effect because I don't know what's going on inside your head. You had a bad outcome, so it must have been caused by a bad decision. Is a story that makes the most sense to me. But when judging myself, if I can make up a wild narrative justifying my past decisions and attributing bad outcome to risk. The cover of Forbes magazine does not celebrate poor investors who made good decisions but happened to experience the unfortunate side of risk, but almost certainly celebrates rich investors who made okay or even reckless decisions and happened to get lucky. Both flip the same coin that happened to land on a different side. The dangerous part of this is that we're all trying to learn about what works and what doesn't with money. What investing strategies work? Which ones don't? What business strategies work? Which ones don't? How do we get rich? How do you avoid being poor? We tend to seek out these lessons by observing success and failures and saying, do what she did, avoid what he did. If we had a magic wand, we would find out exactly what proportion of these outcomes were caused by actions that are repeatable versus the role of random risk and luck that sway these actions one way or the other. But we don't have a magic wand. We have brains that prefer easy answers without much appetite for nuance. So identifying the traits we should emulate or avoid can be agonizingly hard. Let me tell you another story of someone who, like Bill Gates, was widely successful, but whose success is hard to pin down as being caused by luck or skill. Cornelius Vanderbilt had just finished a series of business deals to expand his railroad empire. One of his business advisors leaned in to tell Vanderbilt that every transaction he agreed to broke the law. By God, John, said Vanderbilt, you don't suppose you can run a railroad in accordance with the statutes of the state of New York, do you? My first thought when reading this was, that attitude is why he was so successful. Laws didn't accommodate railroads during Vanderbilt's day, so he said, to hell with it, and went ahead anyways. Vanderbilt was widely successful, so it's tempting to view his law flaunting, which was notorious and vital to his success, as sage wisdom. That scrappy visionary will let nothing to get in his way. But how dangerous is that analysis? No sane person would recommend flagrant crime as an entrepreneurial trait. You can easily imagine Vanderbilt's story turning out much different. An outlaw whose young company collapsed under court order. So we have a problem here. You can praise Vanderbilt for flaunting the law with as much passion as you criticize, Enron for doing the same. Perhaps one got lucky by avoiding the arm of the law, while the other found itself on the side of risk. John D. Rockefeller is similar. His frequent circumventing of the law, a judge once called his company no better than a common thief, is often portrayed by historians as cunning business smarts. Maybe it was, but when does the narrative shift from you didn't let outdated laws in the way of innovation to you committed a crime? Or how little would the story have to shift for a narrative to have turned from Rockefeller was a genius, try to learn from his success, to Rockefeller was a criminal, try to learn from his business failures? Very little. What do I care about the law? Vanderbilt once said, and I got the power. He did, and it worked, but it's easy to imagine those being the last words of a story with a very different outcome. The line between bold and reckless can be thin. When do, don't when we don't give risk and luck their proper billing, it's often invisible. Benjamin Graham is known as one of the greatest invest, investors of all times, the father of value investing and the early mentor of Warren Buffett. But the majority of Benjamin Graham's investing success was due to owning an enormous chunk of Geico stock, which, by his own admission, broke nearly every diversification rule that Graham himself laid out in his famous texts. Where do the thin line between bold and reckless fall here? I don't know. Graham wrote about his Geico bonanza. One lucky break or one supremely shrewd decision. Can we tell them apart? Not easily. We similarly think Mark Zuckerberg is a genius for turning down Yahoo's 2006 $1 billion offer to buy his company. He saw the future and stuck to his guns. But people criticize Yahoo with as much passion for turning down its own big buyout from Microsoft. Those fools should have cashed out while they could. What is the lesson for entrepreneurs here? I have no idea because risk and luck are so hard to pin down. There are so many examples of this. Countless fortunes and failures owe their outcomes to leverage. The best and worst managers drive their employers as hard as they can. The customer is always right, and customers don't know what they want, are both accepted business wisdoms. The line between inspiringly bold and foolishly reckless can be a millimeter thick and only visible with hindsight. Risk and luck are doppelgangers. This is not an easy problem to solve. The difficulty is identifying what is luck, what is skill, and what is risk, and one of the biggest problems we face when trying to learn about the best way to manage money. But two things can point you in a better direction. Be careful who you praise and admire. Be careful who you look down upon and wish to avoid becoming. Or just be careful when assuming that 100% of outcomes can be attributed to effort and decision. After my son was born, I wrote him a letter that said in part, some people are born into families that encourage education, others are against it. Some are born into flourishing economies encouraging entrepreneurs. Others are born into war and destitution. I want you to become successful and I want you to earn it. But realize that not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging people, including yourself. That's pretty important or pretty powerful. It's saying, efforts part of it, but not to judge people too harshly. Therefore, focus less on specific individuals and case studies, and more on broad patterns. Studying a specific person can be dangerous because we tend to study extreme examples, the billionaires, the CEOs, or the massive failures that dominate the news. And extreme examples are often the least applicable to other situations, given their complexity. The more extreme the outcome, the less likely you can apply its lessons to your own life, because the more likely the outcomes were influenced by extreme ends of luck or risk. You, you'll get closer to actionable takeaways by looking for broad patterns of success and failure. The more common the pattern, the more applicable it might be to your life. Trying to emulate Warren Buffett's investment success is hard because his results are so extreme that the role of luck in his lifetime performance is very likely high, and luck isn't something you can reliably emulate. But realizing, as we'll see in chapter 7, the people who have control over their time tend to be happier in life is a broad and common enough observation that you can do something with. My favorite historian, Frederick Lewis Allen, spent his career depicting the life of the average median American, how they lived, how they changed, what they did for work, what they ate for dinner, etc. There are more relevant lessons to take away from this kind of broad observation than there are in studying extreme characters that tend to dominate the news. Bill Gates once said, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." When things are going extremely well, realize it's not as good as you think. You're not invisible, and if you acknowledge that luck brought you success, then you have to believe in luck's cousin, risk, which can turn your story around just as quickly. But the same is true in the other direction. Failure can be a lousy teacher because it seduces smart people into thinking their decisions were terrible when sometimes they just reflect the unforgiving realities of risk. The trick when dealing with failure is arranging your financial life in a way that a bad investment here and a missed financial go there won't wipe you out, so you can keep playing until the odds fall in your favor. But more important is that as much as we recognize the roles of luck and success, the role of risk means we should forgive ourselves and leave room for understanding when judging failure. Nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Now let's look at the stories of two men who pushed their luck. And that was the end of chapter 2. So the stories of the men who pushed their luck will probably be at the beginning of chapter 3. Hopefully, you found some value in this. Keep checking back for more from the Psychology of Money. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification. Thank you, and have a good day.